Greetings, nerds. This is Cena Nerd. This is the Mr. Producer, Will Polk. I'm sliding over to the host chair tonight because our host, Sarah Belmont, unfortunately had a work emergency that came up and cannot join us. But even though the work antimatter wave caught up with her on Earth 1, the show must go on. So, joining me back tonight here in the Vanishing Point to talk the Crisis on Infinite Earths finale is our two paragons of hope and truth. Welcome back, Veronica and Tasha. How you guys doing?
Great.
Good. How are you?
Doing okay. Doing okay. This is a weird place to be. I'm sitting in the host chair, so I'm just sort of like, oh, I get to run the show tonight. That's just this is it truly
Let's
is
all
like
talk about Barry Allen.
yeah, it's all flash talk. Yes, yes. But hey, you know what? It's so fitting that it's actually a crisis because there's been so many changes that's happened in the multiverse. So, I guess we're in the new Earth Prime here tonight. So
Right.
this is what happens. This is what happens. But yeah, but it's been a busy week. So before we start, we talk crisis. There's, as I said, been a lot of news that dropped today. As a matter of fact, one of the first things many listeners to the podcast knows we were huge fans of the Watchmen, and we got word today that that Daniel Lindelof has decided not to come back, and HBO decided not to pursue with another creator. So, what do you guys think about that?
I actually really loved the first season the way it was. I mean, they left a couple of things open-ended, with the possibility of her getting powers, but I'm okay that they're not gonna try to, find another, because it wouldn't be the same. And I don't want to diminish what season 1 was by having just any old body come in and try to push forward to season 2, because season 1 was pretty perfect.
Yeah, it was. It was. I completely, wholeheartedly agree. Sarah, when we did our finale podcast, made the excellent point that this season was one that you could basically hold up in film school as an example of how you do a series. And every first year film student should watch The Watchmen because it's just such a complete, powerful story. It had a beginning, an end, and my personal concern was if they did try to do a second season, even with the original creators, how do you come even close to topping what they did this season? So when I heard the news earlier today that season 2 was not happening, it was bittersweet. Yes, I would love to play in that sandbox a little bit, but at the same time, my initial reaction after watching the first season was, I'm okay with it just being a limited series and just keep the magic that it was, so we don't end up nitpicking it to death on shows like this. As far as how I wish we could go back to season 1 magic.
I definitely, I actually thought Watchmen was going to be a limited series. I didn't realize that there was maybe an intention to go into other seasons. I honestly was thinking that it was just a limited season, series that was going to be airing, and that was it. I didn't. So I haven't watched it yet. So now I know going into it, when I do start watching the whole thing, I can, not have the expectations for what may come the following season. So
yeah. Well, definitely, it's definitely a show that I recommend everyone, genre fans, not genre fans. I just tell everyone, if you're looking for a show, Watchmen's definitely one you want to catch up on and make sure you add it to your rotation of shows.
no, definitely.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree, because this is coming from somebody who did not like the movies, who is not. I didn't read the comic. I didn't like the movie, but I absolutely love the show. Like, it's something I would go back and rewatch, and I think it was perfectly done.
Yeah. I tell my wife all the time, it's like, you've got to watch Watchmen. It's one of those ones I'm willing to do a rewatch with you. We have to watch it. But yeah, moving on to other things that happened this week. We got the first Morbius trailer. And
Yes.
yeah, so Veronica, what did you think about it?
Oh, I was all for it because I'm very big on creepy and like supernatural kind of stuff, like especially if it has kind of like a creepy, gory kind of feel to it. And that's like right up my alley as far as like uh, when it comes to any kind of character that's going to have like a superpower. So when I saw, like, I don't know a lot about Morbius because I've never really been a huge Marvel fan. So I honestly, I'd heard of it, but I never really paid much attention to it.
Mhm.
But just that initial like trailer, I was like, oh my God. I've watched a trailer several times already now because I'm like so into it. I really can't wait to learn more about it. I actually started to like look it up to see what kind of if I want to maybe invest in some of the comic books.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I am definitely looking forward to it. And I think Jared Leto, he's so good at creepy. He
Yeah,
really is.
yeah, he is. He is. I know he has because of some of his antics and whatnot, that's left a bad taste in people's mouths. But
Yeah.
yeah. Tasha, what did you think about it?
I thought it was great. Like anything that's, and the funny thing, like I'm one of those people who's not particularly into scary, but I love creepy. And they're like, he's basically a vampire. He's a vampire. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's my jam. Like that's right. That's
Yeah.
my wheelhouse right there. I love that. So it was so I really loved it. It pulled me in like the first couple of scenes from the trailer. And while same boat, I really don't know a lot about it, but I'm
Mhm.
very curious and looking forward to seeing more stuff as it gets released.
Yeah. So I too love the trailer. When I first heard about the Morbius movie, I had the same kind of feeling I had with when I heard they were doing Venom without Spider-Man. Because Morbius is a character from Spider-Man. I don't, again, like you both, the most of my knowledge, quite frankly, comes from the 1990s Spider-Man cartoon that was just it was super amazing. And if you have Disney Plus, check it out because it's on there now. And so I knew Michael Morbius from that and the whole vampire backstory and the disease and trying to do cure and all that kind of stuff. So, I love the creepy. And the one thing that really just like blew me away was, and I'm sure it did the same for y'all, was when we saw Michael Keaton at the end.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I was gonna say, I was
Yeah,
just gonna say, I was like,
Yeah,
whoa.
I
that
mean,
definitely threw me for a loop. I was like, wait, what? What's
yeah,
happening?
yeah. It's like, wait a minute now. The Sony now, granted, this is Sony, so and not Disney. As of course we knew back in the summer we had all the drama behind us, the back office drama with Disney and Sony and Marvel Studios and Feige walking away and everything about that. But they came back together, and we have to remember Spider-Man, even though he's been in the MCU films, he still is a Sony property. So if this is indeed the Vulture and is going to be crossing over into the MCU, even if it's just dipping his toe, I'm there for it. It's just it's like, yes, this is like the best ever if we do have that, and of course it leads to the Sinister Six, which uh, for Spider-Man as far as his arch enemy. So we now have had Venom, we've had Vulture, and who else? Let's see, and then of course Mysterio in the last movie. So at some point we're going to get Norman Osborn again. Some point we'll maybe get Dr. Octavius, and so yeah, I'm so there.
See, I never got into the Spider-Man series, so I have no idea who you're talking about in any of those. But I can honestly say that, like, just the singular of just that movie Morbius, I was like, okay, yeah, because I'm kind of MCU'd out right now,
Mhm.
so I'm ready to like move on to something different. But when I saw that one, I like Tasha said, if it's having to do with vampires, and like, you know, that kind of like, I guess you could say mythology or folklore or whatever you want to get, you know, whatever they're going to use for it, I'm all about it. But when it comes to like, I don't know, the Black Widow trailer, mm-mm.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, let's talk about Black Widow. So you said you're MCU'd out. So is this so? Do you wish that this film? I don't think we've had a chance to talk to you about
No.
this as far as Black Widow, and is the timing right for this, or would have been better? Obviously,
It would
before
have been
Endgame.
better if they had it come out back when she was first introduced in Iron Man. I mean, let's face it, like I would have loved having this movie back then. But now, like I'm done. I'm tired. I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to move forward. I'm kind of over Scarlett Johansson at this point now. Yeah. So
Yeah, we're not.
I'm ready to.
We're saving the Oscars for later.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
We're gonna let that breathe a little bit before we talk Oscars.
Yeah, I'm over her, but I'm definitely MCU'd out right now. I really am. I'm kind of. It's just after Endgame that I'm good. I am good.
Okay, Tasha, what were your thoughts on the new Black Widow trailer?
I totally agree. It's one of those situations like if it's supposed to be in that time when they were on the run, after signing the Accords, then that's when they should have released the movie. Like that would have been the ideal time to release that movie in between. It's like we had this perfect 10-year span, this perfect arc,
Yes.
and now you're like, okay, well, we're gonna go back to like 0.5 and put a 0.5 like right in between. Like it's not necessary. It's not something that I'm like, oh, if it comes, it's one of those situations that's like, oh, if it comes to like Netflix and I'm bored, I'll watch it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not something that I'd be like, oh, the way I would be like, oh, I'm gonna go to the theater to go see Morbius. I'm gonna run to the theater to go see this. They have a great cast, and I'm sure it'll be a good movie because that's their standard. But it's not something that I feel like is needed now because everything feels so well wrapped.
Mm-hmm.
That there's not really a point in going back to insert this. They had so many, like that character was worthy of a movie, but the movie should have happened before Endgame.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
That's a good point. I hear you both, and I have to be completely honest. I was there when I saw the first trailer. The second trailer took me from curious to now you got my attention, and so I really think that I may actually go see this in the theater now. I think the second trailer did a better job, I think, of sort of really fleshing out that this is a continuation, as you mentioned, the Accords, and seeing the Red Soldier. I love anything that
Harbor.
Yeah, he does. David Harbour does. He is great, and there's that. And the other thing that really drew me in this time that the first trailer didn't was seeing Taskmaster and seeing how, I mean, other than that little quick glimpse before, and now seeing Taskmaster in action, really, again, as I said, it got me from curious to now you have my attention. So I think I will probably go see this film in the theater.
I think the only interest the only interest I had in Black Widow trailer 2 was Rachel Weisz.
For me, it's David Harbour and Rachel Weisz. It's like the cast and the actors, and you know that they're going to give you a good performance. Is a bigger pull than actually going to see the movie for the sake of the movie, even though the character deserves the movie because of the timing of it.
Yeah.
That now it feels so like unnecessary and like superfluous. Like we didn't really need this at this point when everything else is basically wrapped. So it's like, okay, but you know that you're gonna get something good and that the actors are gonna bring their A game. So you're like, all right, I'll watch
Yeah.
it. I don't need it, but I'll take it.
Well, I mean, and when it comes down to it, Disney and Marvel, it's all about making money. That's
Yeah.
the bottom line for them.
Yeah.
They got so rich off of Avengers that they're like, you know what? We don't want to stop this. We want to keep making money. So guess what? They're trying to come out with more movies they know that the fans want to see, and so that's what they're doing. And it's like, you know, it's kind of this annoyance for me that they're taking advantage of a universe, a Marvel universe that is held to such high standards. And now that Stan Lee is gone, I almost feel like it's a sort of disrespect to just continue to make money off of his passion. And that's one of the things I think maybe too why I'm so against all the other phases of what they're trying to come out with for Marvel is it's like this greediness that because I'm such an anti-capitalist that I'm kind of like, yeah, no, man, like y'all are taking it to an extreme. But you know what? Hey, if it makes fans happy, I'm okay.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear your point. I think for me, it probably after Endgame, I think it probably would have been good to just let the franchise just rest for a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Give it a little breather, man.
Yeah. Because after that epic film, I feel like, oh man, we jumped right into Spider-Man Far From Home, and then now we're jumping into Black Widow. We have Eternals coming later this year. I just feel like it's too much at one point. But speaking of things, speaking of watching and things that, want to just hear your quick thoughts on some shows that folks should be checking out here in 2020. What's on your watch list, or something you've already started that you would like to recommend to our listeners before we get to the main event?
I'm really hard into the show Evil and the show Deputy that just aired on Fox. Like those two shows are so far. Deputy, the first two episodes have been really interesting.
Is that the Stephen Dorff show?
Yes, and it has Bex Taylor Klaus in it. I think I said her name correctly. Yeah, that show is really different because I was a little nervous about this whole like kind of like redneck sheriff, on the law kind of thing, and it was really surprising the way they started the show addressing illegal immigration and how the sheriff's office doesn't want to participate in helping ICE, track down people. And it caught my attention right away, right away. And then they introduce Deputy Bishop, and she is basically the bodyguard of the sheriff. And she's this little dynamite, and I'm just so impressed with her. She is killing it on that show. So I definitely recommend watching Deputy. And as far as Evil, I mean, anybody who's really into like the paranormal or anything that has to do with like how religion can play into the paranormal and stuff, they would totally, especially too because it's like the best way I can describe it is a paranormal religious type X-Files. Where you have Scully, who's, she's the what's the word I'm looking for? The skeptic. And in this show, the doctor, the psychologist, she's the skeptic, and the religious guy is the believer. So they really play well off each other. So both shows I definitely recommend.
Cool. Veronica, what about you? Tasha, what about you? Sorry.
I'm like, me with TV, I'm so random and sporadic with my TV viewing that I think mostly I'm a Netflix person. So Annie with an E, really great show. Like it's complete now. So anybody who wants to watch something that's like, oh, full rap story, you don't have to worry about it getting canceled midway through. That's a great story. That's a great show to watch. And Good Girls is coming back, which you want a good comedy that's like family comedy, kind of quirky craziness. That's a really good show to watch.
Great. Yeah, for me, there's as far as new shows, I've been meaning to check out Outsiders on the new HBO, the Stephen King show that just premiered just past week at Ben Middleton. But haven't done that because I was rewatching parts 1, 2, and 3 of Crisis to get ready for the finale here. So let's just jump right into it. So yeah. So
Oh boy.
yeah.
I'm
So
gonna
just to
I'm gonna be
reset.
real honest with you guys. Disclaimer: I'm gonna be highly critical of this because, yeah.
Well, that's good. I won't brutal honesty. So let's just reset real fast for everyone. So we ended episode 3. Barry Allen from Earth flashed from Earth 90, vanished. Basically stopped the antimatter machine. Our heroes were desperately fighting very hard to stop the antimatter wave from crossing the universe. Harbinger and everyone was on the Wave Rider. She turned heel and took out the Monitor, and then, but in the last little desperate act, sent 7 of them, our 7 paragons, to the vanishing point, which is outside of normal space and normal time. And then, of course, Earth 1 was destroyed, and we have a time jump, which actually I was very happy, quite honestly, to have that time jump. At first, back in December, I was like, damn it, I want it now. But we do have a time jump, and we see our heroes in various places of sanity
Mm-hmm.
in the vanishing point. And of course, one of the key things that did happen with the 7 paragons, Lex Luthor rewrote the Book of Destiny and replaced Kingdom Come Superman with himself. So fast forward, we are now at episode hour 4, the Arrow Hour. And Tasha, what were your overall impressions of the Crisis finale? And then we'll get a deep dive into some of the things about hour 4 and hour 5 after your overall just general thoughts about it.
Huh. I don't even really know how to really express. It was okay. Hour 4. I liked hour 4 as an Oliver story, not necessarily as an overall Crisis story.
Hmm.
And I feel like in a lot of ways, like the 100th episode for the crossover, how it was an Arrow story that made sense for Arrow didn't necessarily work perfectly into the overall Crisis. The overall crossover, this felt kind of the same thing because they were like hitting so many points. They're in the Speed Force, but they're hitting so many points and that relate to Oliver specifically that it kind of felt off. But I feel like it was, I mean, in the comic, time and space get shattered. So I feel like them hitting all these weird points in Oliver's history was kind of their version of time and space being shattered. So that I was okay with. Hour 5, the yo-yo of like emotional states, like they're sad, Oliver died, then they're laughing and taking selfies with Bebo, and then they're sad, and then they're celebrating that they beat the bad guy, and then they're sad again. And I was just like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be getting out of the Legends hour right now. But I'm guessing that's just the way Legends always is. So
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
I don't really know how to feel about it. Like there were moments, and I feel like maybe it's because I went into this entire crossover looking for a decent arc for Oliver and moments. Like I went into this not really expecting. I mean, I know the comic story, so I'm like, okay, they're gonna do their own version of it. That's fine, whatever. So the major beats, they hit them. the ending, it was what I expected. So I was just like, all right, this is fine. It's serviceable. That's fine for me.
Yeah, Veronica, what are your overall impressions of the final 2 hours of the crossover?
I was disappointed, to be honest. I was really disappointed in a lot of aspects of hour 4, part 4. Hour 5 was very very much a Legends episode, so I was expecting a lot of the quirky, but just overall, it left me with a lot more questions than anything else. And I'm still very like, I mean, I know I don't really watch all the other shows like Flash or Supergirl anymore, so I'm sure that they're probably going to answer those questions that I have in their next, few episodes that they air now. But...
So let's jump into some of your questions, and I will say that just for me, I actually enjoyed hour 4. And also
Gee, I wonder why, Will.
I know it was a lot of Barry. I know it was
a Barry-centric episode, and it's an Arrow. It was an Arrow hour, but it was Barry-centric.
I like the way that they use the Speed Force as a anchor to basically protect our heroes, because this really builds on the mythos of the comics and some of the things that they're doing recently. And granted, yes, I know I read the comics, so I think you don't really want outside material. Your story should be able to hold up without having to go to outside sources.
Sure.
I understand. But that being said, even in this Arrowverse construct of the Speed Force, it made sense for, at least to me, that the heroes and Oliver as Spectre pulled them into the Speed Force to basically be able to do the reset, as Tasha noted, since it does exist outside of normal space and normal time. So from that standpoint, I liked that aspect of the story. And the other thing that I liked, as Tasha noted, was it did do a good job of basically adapting the overarching arc of the comic, bringing it down to scale in a TV show with a TV show budget. So, so I have to say, I thought that hour 4 was was, at least for me, was some of the finer hours of the Arrowverse. I really enjoyed that hour, but I could see where many folks could find it lacking. And I know one of the things that the Spectre using memories to keep each person alive, that gets into Oliver's growth, and I'm gonna kick it to you, Veronica, first. How did you like them using very key points in Oliver's life in this pretty much another, I guess, finale part 2 of Arrow?
Yeah.
Before we finale.
I was okay with it. I wasn't upset with it. I think the only one that really I connected with, as far as memories, is where he's talking to Ray and Kate's there, because Kate is like Oliver Queen a lot when he first came in, say, seasons 1 through, say, 4. And she's got this, like, I'm going to do it all on my own kind of thing. And so her watching, like, the interaction between Ray and Oliver, knowing that they're actually friends now, and she was like, okay, I get it. Like, I can't keep pushing people away. I thought that was great, because that really, for me, that, like, really meshed well.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wasn't, when John went and he talks to Kara and Oliver from Elseworlds, and he's that I don't know. All the thing with Barry and the Speed Force, that was more of like an explanation, so I was okay with that or whatever. But just overall, I was like, ugh, I wanted more Arrow characters. I wanted more from, to see more of John Diggle and more of Laurel Lance and more of, the characters that basically are ending the show. And
Right.
I didn't really get that. It was kind of like lacking for me, especially because it is an Arrow episode.
True. But they kind of, unfortunately, they were put on the shelf as far as being
It
back
was
Earth
like
one.
they were kind of,
and that's one of the things. And Tasha, maybe you can answer this. One of the big things over, to your point, Veronica, is how these shows, even though they were the quote unquote Arrow hour or the Black Lightning didn't have their standalone hour, but they did have their 2.5. But Batwoman hour, other character stories were more developed in those quote unquote hours. Do you think that was a disservice to basically use the vanishing point and have these paragons sort of be the figure points in the crisis? Would have been better if, just like in the comic, everybody still had a role and people weren't put on the shelf to service the story, to focus it on 7 key characters?
Yeah. Okay. So this, like what she was saying, it kind of put them in a box. Like, you can't use the Arrow characters in the Arrow hour because the idea was that Spectre Oliver is tethering specifically the paragons. So they needed to use key moments with the paragons. So, like I said, I felt like the hour worked for Oliver's arc, and because all season Oliver has basically been saying goodbye to people from his past and to his specific show's characters. So it was like, in this crossover, now he's saying goodbye to, in the Arrow hour, he was saying goodbye to all the other characters from the other shows, not just his show. So in that sense, it works, but I totally understand everybody who's like, okay, would have been nice if we spent more time with Dinah and Renee and Laurel and Diggle. And that makes total sense, because for me, out of all of the little moments that he had with these characters, I feel like I totally agree. The one with Kate and Oliver and Ray was probably the strongest. I like the one with Kara, but the one with Laurel and Sarah and Dig, that one was the one that I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, Oliver isn't in this scene at all.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
He was in all of the other ones, and he isn't in this scene at all. So I'm like, for him to be tethering them, he should be in that scene with Laurel and Sarah as the person who's tethering it, and then Barry show up. So because he wasn't there, I was like, this is dumb. This doesn't fit with everything else that you've done in all of the other memories.
I feel like that was a setup for Green Arrow and Canaries, is what I felt. You know what I mean? I felt like that was a nice,
it was just
little
a
plug.
Reminder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was, and I agree that, to me, that one was the most non sequitur ones of the paragons as far as that moment, because you're right, the others really did establish key moments in Oliver's growth. And really, this episode, even though this was the Arrow hour, and people like Felicity and Dinah and other members from OTA and UTA weren't present, those moments, leading up to the finale with Oliver Spectre confronting the Anti-Monitor, I think it clearly made sense, and that's why he was able to die in peace. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's why he was like, dying's the easy part, because and he did he basically acknowledged in looking up and seeing the new universe that he created as the Spectre, and with the reboot, the reset, Oliver finally was at peace, and it does make sense when you go back to the first hour when he was killed in the Supergirl hour. The monitor said it wasn't supposed to happen this way, and so when you fast forward it to the current hour, I understand why they structured Oliver's death the way that they did.
Yeah.
Right.
Honestly, Oliver Queen dying, creating a universe is like the most meta thing we've ever done.
Yes.
Oliver literally created the Arrowverse. So I'm just
right.
Yeah, that
this
is
makes perfect sense.
And I guess that was the parallel they're going for, you know?
Yeah. It was. It's so meta, and that's I hadn't really thought about that until just now. That is the most fitting way for him to go. And so I like that. So of course the other part that I felt was very strong story and sort of off ramp into the future was Lex and Kara when they were on Malthus.
Yeah.
Again, she's the character of hope, and he, even at his core, speaking of universe building, Lex is all about Lex, and I loved how they used that hour to show again how Lex is all about Lex, Kara, and her distrust, and basically, setting up hour 5 when we have the reset, and how she is now having to work for Lex Luthor, and he is the ultimate good guy, and Lex basically created the universe that he wanted in this reset. So I really liked that moment, but I say this the best one to last. And you know which one I'm talking about.
Yes.
Holy shit. That's what I said when it happened.
That was my reaction. I honestly screamed. I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Oh my God. I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is actually really cool. Like, for me, I think Grant Gustin, as much as I don't like Barry Grates on my nerves, like Grant Gustin is the Flash. Like, that's the character, and I enjoy him better as that, the actor for that role than I think maybe, poor Ezra, like, I feel like it was kind of tainted for me because just generally I didn't love the movie and the costume, just the whole thing. But it was still really, really, really cool to see the two of them together.
Yeah.
Veronica. It sucked for me because right when Barry arrives in the lab and he stands up and he's like, whoa, that's when CW cut out for me. It went off air. And it was off air for like, I think it was like 2 or 3 minutes, right? It went to commercial, real random. And I was like, what the hell? It comes back. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at, I think I was looking at Lex when he like, what does he do? He shoots Kara, I guess. Yeah. Right? Yep. With his suddenly he has powers. Yep. And I was like, whoa, wait a second. What did I miss? That he suddenly has power. Then all of a sudden, black. The screen is black. And there I am trying to check all the channels. So I missed out on that. But today I got to watch it and I was like, oh, because everybody, it got spoiled for me. So I knew, like, I already knew what happened. I knew there was Ezra Miller, but that was honestly, I thought that was a pretty cool little, add in. I enjoyed that. I thought that was pretty sweet the way they played off each other.
That was, and kudos to Warner Brothers and the crew of the Flash for keep not spoiling this. I mean, this was the closest thing I can think in recent memory where something wasn't spoiled as far as pop culture is Baby Yoda and the Mandalorian. That's as far as recent memory, because everything is spoiled these days. But the simple fact that they were able to get him to Vancouver, filmed the scene and not it, Canadagraphs or nobody caught it. It's
Not even the
just
cast knew. The rest of the
No.
cast didn't even know from the crossover. Like all the other
Yeah.
stars, like Brandon Routh and Melissa, all of them were like, "Oh my God, how did you guys do this?" We didn't know. Nobody knew.
and I guess apparently Warner Brothers was behind this, and they called
they reached
Guggenheim
out.
up and made it happen. And getting back in story, there were a couple. I know some folks were like, "Oh, it's just fan service, blah blah blah," but I mean, there were two things that stood out to me that Ezra's Flash said. One, I told Victor this was possible. And the reason why I bring that up is because it at least in the Justice League universe, that version of Barry Allen realized that there's a possibility for multiverses.
Mm.
So for me, that was a very key line that basically it was an in-story line that basically WB, in real world, breaking down the firewalls between the DCTV and the DCEU. But that was a good in-story way of addressing that. And then, of course, obviously when Grant Gustonbury gets his name, yeah,
Yeah, that was really cool because it's like they, for so long they've been against having that kind of crossover, having the stories, meld in that way, which is ridiculous because we're all smart enough to understand the difference between the two.
Right.
And this was like a great, and it kind of works because after the whole disaster of those movies, they have an opportunity. He's still trying to push forward his Flash movie, and this is an opportunity to like, okay, you can bring in your, whoever was already going to see it. You're going to bring in more of the, the TV fans, because everybody's going to want to be like, okay, I wonder if this is going to be any way, shape, or form reference, even if it's a throwaway line in the movie.
Right. Or even having Grant show up or some other actors from the TV shows. I mean, it really does, if they want to go the Marvel route, allows them for them to do that. And also, I think Anthony Muschietti had the news of the last couple of weeks. They did mention that the Flash movie is going to be Flashpoint. So this, again, having this tip of the hat and breaking down the wall in the television universe, it gives them a creative way, story-wise now, to be able to do a Flashpoint story and reset everything in this new multiverse that our crisis has opened up, because obviously you had the Matt Reeves Batman. So this is another way you can tell the younger Batman story just by using the television universe to help set it up. So I think it was just genius for them to do it this way. Anything else from hour 4 before we move to hour 5?
I was a little upset about the fact that Mark Guggenheim, in his little Crisis Aftermath show that he did with Kevin Smith, he talks about that we were going to get like a full story about Mar Novu. I didn't get much. We got like a minute.
Yeah.
Or less than. And I was really disappointed because I was expecting something a little bit more intriguing than, his wife is the Monitor and he just happens to be a scientist, like testing things out, and then he becomes the Monitor. Like, I don't know. I was wanting something more, and it didn't really answer a whole lot of questions. Like, I guess because I know of the character, and because I love Harbinger, and then she just wasn't even in there, because Harbinger is the reason that she's able to get everybody together. Like she in the comics, right? So I was a little annoyed. I was hoping for something more, and he really didn't. He did not do it
would
justice.
have been nice if we would have even had like a flashback to him meeting Lila or him saving Lila. That would have, rounded out that story, so that even if she didn't appear anymore until, the last couple of seconds of Legends, it would have been fine.
And like, exactly.
And it also kind of felt like they stole Pariah's story
Yes, that's what I was
and
just
gave
thinking.
Pariah's story to the Monitor, because I'm like,
Yep.
isn't it the Over Monitor who created the Monitor and the Anti Monitor and the positive and negative map? So, like, where did you come? Like, what's happening here?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I'm like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then what is Pariah's purpose? Like, you just unleashed him and that's it. Like, you're supposed to be. It was that part was underwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like when we go into hour 5, I mean, Nash is Nash. Like, he's not Pariah, you know what I mean? He's just this character who happens to have a fancy gizmo and saying, "Oh, there's still antimatter."
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, and it's like, well, yeah, he's still Nash. He's and in the comic, if I recall, I mean, Pariah basically still was able to have that same kind of role, but yeah, it just, I wish they had he should have, even though the Paragons should have kept memories of what happened, he should have kept memories of what happened too, without John having to like confuse it into him. To know
part of his, and wasn't like part of his thing was, even after the crisis, he was going around trying to other universes, or other worlds, trying to help clean up the mess that he made in the first place.
Exactly.
So that would have been a good way to be like, at least for him to say, okay, well, I made this mess and I need to also help clean it up.
Yeah. That would have been that. I think that would have worked better instead of just him going back to Nash Wells and and he, I mean, I guess once John did give him the memories back, he did play that role a little bit with antimatter detection device. But yeah, I think it would have been a better route, like you said, to go up the route that the comic book went.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, I don't know. Like, granted, when it comes to the Legends of Tomorrow episode, like I said, the quirkiness of it all totally fit. I'm a huge Legends fan, so it totally made sense for me. But a lot of like, I would have liked a little bit more of Pariah's. Oh, you know what? We've got to fix this. This is what we have to do.
Mm-hmm. And
all he did was show his arm and look. You know, I mean, it's just, I don't know. When they introduced us to the 5th hour, in the very beginning, when they start talking about everything going on, like, okay, so Supergirl's back, she's realizing they're all on the same Earth. Went right back to what I said about the first hour of Crisis, that if you aren't a comic book fan, you're not going to know who a lot of these, surprise characters are, or surprise actors. So having Marv Wolfman asking
lovely
for their autograph, like, for us who know, that was awesome.
Yeah. That was,
but again, for those who didn't know, they're going, who's this old man?
Yeah.
For us, it was like, oh, it's a Stan Lee moment. That's really cute. But
exactly.
Yeah, nobody knows. So it was, I don't know, and they went right back to it. But then, at this point, by the time we got to the 5th hour, I gave up. I gave up live tweeting. I just sat back and watched. I was like, because I just wanted so much more. And I loved the introduction of Bebo. And I loved how cute Ray was with "let's take a selfie," because that's so Ray. That's so Legends.
Yeah. I don't watch Legends, but that's so
and one of the things I love about Ray is how like super dorky cute he is, and I love that. But that guy who is robbing the bank, like, that didn't need to be in the story. I'm sorry, like.
Well, I guess the Sargon. Basically, the Sargon the Sorcerer. I mean, again, it's a couple tie-ins. One, I think it could tie into Stargirl, because Sargon, at least the original Sargon, was a JSA, Justice Society character, and he was
okay.
So and of course, Legends did have they had the Justice Society, and I think it was of Legends, if I
Yes.
recall. Yeah, so there's that connection. So at first when I was like, oh, what's so and also again it's helping to establish that this Earth Prime is like Weather Girl, Wizard's
Yeah.
daughter. When they're burying Kara, it's like, oh, that's my bad, that's one of mine. So it was really helping to establish their respective villains, establishing that, hey, this new Earth Prime is here, and and sort of helping, I guess, explain what the paragons were dealing with when they were even themselves trying to come to terms with what just happened.
For me, I think a great way to make up for the whole pariah mess would have been to have Reverse Flash be the person that Supergirl came across first. One, because he said, see you in the next crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And you would
Yes.
have had the same situation of her being like, why are you on my Earth?
Mm-hmm.
And then have Barry show up and they have that fight. It would have closed
That would have
down
been
something
smart.
that was
Yeah.
dropped before. It would have explained away why we didn't have Pariah still there. And we could have, they want to have Bebo, but we could have done without Weather
Yeah.
Weather Witch
Yeah.
and that character and replaced it with Reverse Flash. That would have been a far more fulfilling way to have the story and the actors that we had. It's like you're bringing in two random actors when you already have this actor and he's sitting on that you're paying that's basically lying on a table and getting yelled at by John Combs. Like, come on.
Yeah.
That would have
Exactly.
been better.
True.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
definitely. They really I read in that interview, Will, that you posted with Mark Guggenheim, and he made it very clear that they thought they were going to have enough time to fit in everything that they wanted to, and they didn't. And all 5 hours, everything was so rushed. A lot of characters didn't have a chance to be known by non-comic fans.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was a huge disservice to fans of the TV shows, because you don't have to be a comic fan to like these shows. But for anybody who has never read the comics, watching this whole crisis, so many people were really lost and really confused. And I thought maybe it would get better with these last 2 hours, and it really didn't, because it left a lot of people wanting, and Black Lightning fans were disappointed because Jefferson wasn't really a part of anything until the very end, and I get it, like they probably could only have him do so much, but I just
Yeah.
Like you could see the filming that like this was scheduling and filming, because like him and Killer Frost and Heatwave are just randomly fighting.
Yeah.
In Star Labs, and everybody else is like, and I'm like, are these the only two places that the Shadow Demons
Exactly.
Like, these are all the souls from every dead world, and it's only two spots. They decided we're gonna fight right here.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, okay, we're stuck. This is all we can do. You guys are gonna have to take it and like it, because we can't do anything else.
Yes, exactly.
One of the things I would definitely want us to touch on from the fifth hour too is how Sarah Lance treated Oliver's passing and Diggle. And Diggle's just very distraught, feeling like I let my brother down. I know Sarah Belmont, our host, was, whenever the scene from Arrow, when we talked about it before, she thought that was very cheesy and just didn't really work. I felt the opposite, but I wanted to get your thoughts as far as how you felt Diggle's reaction to Oliver and Sarah Lance's thoughts. He's not gone. We gotta find him. Did you think?
John's reaction for me was actually one of the first times ever in any of the shows that I actually got teary-eyed over watching him cry. Like, straight up. I didn't think that was going to happen. Because, I don't really cry at the TV shows that I watch. And so when I saw his tear, I was like, oh, I get his reaction. Like, I get it because he's one of the originals with Oliver. I mean, literally, it was him and Oliver in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And so I liked that they allowed him to show his vulnerability, his sadness, his shock in losing his brother and not being able to have done anything to try to stop it. So I, not so much that I thought it was cheesy. I personally liked it. I liked them being able to give us that little moment with him. And then with Sarah, I can understand like the feeling that she gets that he's the last person alive or he was the last person alive who really knew her before her life now. The lines were a little cheesy that they had her say, but I kind of understood where she was coming from.
Tasha?
Okay. First, I want to say that one of the things I really appreciated about this crossover in general was, besides Oliver's arc, was Sarah's. Because she did technically start this with Oliver. Like, on the Gambit, they started this, and I love that she got to finally be in that leadership role. She deserves it. She's earned it. She's trained for it. So I really like that. As far as her grief, that made total sense to me. It's on brand. That's somebody that she's had this connection to, even if it's somebody she didn't see. Like, she was back in last season and she didn't even see him, but that's still, that person that you don't have to talk to him for an entire year, and when you do, it's like it was yesterday. So that's he was that connection for her. So I totally understood that.
And that's it was also a good connection back to, I think, hour 2 or whenever they went after Jonathan Kent from the earlier in the crossover, whenever she kind of old Oliver on, I can't remember what
Oliver.
Yeah.
And for Dig, like, to me that made perfect sense. Dig has been, since episode 1 of this season, he's just been so adamant, like, no, my brother's not dying. He's not dying. I'm not letting it happen. I don't accept it. And it's like, even though in 807 he said, okay, I kind of get that there's going to be a point that you're going to have to, that I can't hold on to you because you're going to have to go that far alone. He thought he would at least be there for Oliver's last moment. So him not being there, especially, like, he already lost a brother with Andy. Now he's going to lose another one, and he's not there. So him having that reaction is made perfect sense to me. Like, that's the reaction Dig would have. Because he felt like
exactly.
He was literally Oliver's bodyguard. He's always been at his back, always been there to make sure, like, okay, I'm going to make sure you don't go off the rails today. That's my job. You save the city and I save you. That's him. So that reaction made total sense to me.
Yeah. And also think that reaction, and also just thinking ahead, looking at some of the trailers coming up for 6B of The Flash, for example, Diggle and Barry having conversations about Oliver's death, which it seems to me, no matter what they do in 810, the Oliver Queen that we know was lost during this was definitively lost during this crossover event. I don't think there's basically, I think 810 is going to be Oliver and Felicity reunited in Valhalla after well done, thou good and faithful servant, and here's your that stuff. But I think that would be I would be very satisfied with that finale. He met, as I said earlier, he met his end, a heroic end, by creating the universe. And speaking of that, what are your thoughts as far as moving forward? We see the formation of a Justice League or Super Friends. Well, I'll just say Super Friends because we got Gleek, and so the Wonder Twins are going to show up at some point in the future.
Well, I didn't know who Gleek was because I didn't watch the cartoons. So I was like, what the? All I know Gleek is somebody who liked Glee. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I watched the cartoons, so when I saw it, I went, "Oh my god!
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my god! Oh my god! No way! This is
I'm so much
ridiculous."
older than you guys. No.
And honestly, it's my older sister. She's like significantly older than me. But when I was little, she'd watch them, and she's like, "All right, come sit here with me and watch it." So when I saw it, I was like, I instantly knew, like, oh wow, I can't believe they're doing this.
Yeah, so yeah, like I said, I'm just waiting for the Wonder Twins now. So that'll be the next
Well,
crossover. But
okay, so I have to say that the way that Barry set up to have the Justice League, so to speak, I thought that was pretty awesome, and to have a memorial with an eternal flame right there for Oliver, I thought that was pretty cool. I like the idea that from now on, that instead of, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we're going to have any more crossovers like this. But I think it's kind of neat to be able to now have the shows come together in one Earth so that they can fight together. And so you don't have to spend time on this huge, massive crossover. Now you can just have Supergirl visit Batwoman, and Flash goes and helps out Legends, or whatever. So we'll see what happens. I mean, it's hard for me to imagine what's going to come, because I don't really, I'm not into Flash and I'm not into Supergirl, but I do watch Black Lightning and I do watch Legends and I watch Batwoman. So I mean, I don't know.
yeah,
so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so Tasha, what do you think? So we have 809 next week as far as Arrow. It's backdoor pilot. What do you think we're going to see with that series? It seems that
I'm gonna say, like, well, based on the promo, Mia's gonna get her memories back. I'm hoping William also gets his memories back, because if it's just her, I'm gonna be super, super, super angry. He deserves to have those memories with his father. They both do, because I feel like, I'm not a big fan of, they already went back and changed things, which, yes, I wanted the world to be better. Like, I didn't want Oliver to die and it having been for nothing, because his kids are growing up in this horrible city. So I'm glad that they, this new world, the future is changed and better for them. But they need to also keep those memories, because that, it's not just, him getting closure. It's also a lot of growth that they got by bonding with him.
Mhm.
So I feel like that's really important. So it should be interesting to see how that storyline goes forward for them. And then in the finale, I've been saying that I feel like it's just going to be like the memorial service. Everyone's there, and then they have little flashes of moments that people had with him that were meaningful. And then, at the end, you see Oliver, and I tweeted it earlier today, but I noticed that when the Supergirl episode opened, it was the Monitor giving this big message about how, the universe was born.
Mm-hmm.
And the crossover ended with Oliver giving that speech.
Yep.
I'm like, Oliver's out there.
Yeah.
They don't have a body. He's out there in the ether. He's just floating around someplace.
Yeah.
Watching over everything. And based on, what they've said in interviews, I'm like, he's just going to be there. And then it's going to be like, okay, Felicity's ready to get her husband back now. And then poof, the two of them, you're just going to see the two of them together. They're just together now.
Yeah.
In some pocket dimension, someplace else, just reunited, and like, okay, we're done saving everybody. You guys can go save the world now. We're taking a vacation. We're done with this. We're
an alternate Ivy Town.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Veronica, I know you watched both Black Lightning and Batwoman. So, what do you think is what we're going to see post crisis with those two respective shows?
I swear, I'm already picturing Jefferson going back and saying, "Man, I had the weirdest trip."
Yeah, actually, he says it in the promo.
Like, I had a total trip. I'm not even sure what I took. Was it green light? I don't know. I'm curious to see what's going to happen because of how Jennifer
Yeah.
She even got a chance to know that there is alternate worlds out there, and so I want to see how they're going to come together. And I'm still kind of on the fence about this whole like occupation of Freeland,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and what's happening there. So there's a lot to cover for them, but I'm looking for something that, you know, where Black Lightning finally can feel like, hey, you know what, I'm not alone here. Like, it's not just me and my daughters fighting these evil forces.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, there's other good people out there, and people I know will back me up.
yeah.
So
I
I want
think
to see how that's going to come into play.
that's a very good point, and I think that's one of the good outcomes. Because I know they were very resistant to having Black Lightning in the Arrowverse, but I think, but your point there is spot on, that he knows now that there is a much larger world of superheroes and people like him, so he can lean on whenever he's having issues with Tobias.
Exactly. And then as for Kate, I definitely am thinking that this whole experience is going to show her that, like, she needs to let Fox in. She needs to let him be there for her more than he is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because she's so adverse to his being a part of her mission at this point. And I'm hoping that when she goes, you know, when we see her go back, she's gonna look at him and be like, okay, you're my teammate and we're gonna do this together. Like, she's gonna start slowly opening up, because she got to see what happened with Oliver, and she got to realize, like, you know, look at what he accomplished. And it was because he let
system. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
He let people in. So
yeah, and also her stepsister, I think, is also, that's going to change their relationship, because, you know, she has had her very arm's length as far her being Batwoman. So I think the events of Crisis is going to change their relationship, given that, assuming that her stepmother is still dead in the New Earth Prime. I think that could have some impacts on that story.
I wouldn't be surprised if she.
What's that?
Yeah. Seeing the bond between Kara and Alex, the fact that they're sisters, they work together. They, you know, she knows her identity, and they make it work. Like, that should be the same way Oliver with Ray helped her. That should also be a thing, to be like, you can have people in your life, and you can learn from them, and you can help them, and they can help you, and it'll make you a better hero, not a lesser one, because you have those connections.
Yeah, exactly. She needs to let people in, because she's not going to be able to do that alone.
Yeah. I tell you, for me, two shows that, as far as post-crisis, this post-crisis might get me back into Supergirl, because with Lex Luthor being the good guy and Nobel Prize winner and Kara's boss, and whether or not he still has the superpowers or not from his experience as a Paragon, you know, that alone, and plus, just I have to say, John Cryer is killing it as Lex Luthor. I know before my Lex Luthor was Gene Hackman. Now it's John Cryer. I mean, he is just killing it as that character. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. And apparently, I think Lena does know that Earth 38 existed. So she's still holding on to that. How they betrayed her, and then as far as the Flash, looking at the trailer, it seems that they're going to be adapting the Black Hole line from the recent comic in the Rebirth, as far as the 6B, because they finally got caught on to the fact that you don't need a season-long big bad. so looking at the trailer, it definitely seems that the Black Hole is an organized crime terrorist group that basically was able to tap into the Speed Force to create weapons and stuff. And there's in the trailer teased Iris looked like she's going bad, but actually in the comic she actually was working undercover to find out more about this organization. So I'm looking forward to seeing that being adapted, because especially given that Flash has been renewed for season 7, and with this new crossover, that post-crisis world, we did see Superman at the table at the Justice League. So again, that saw another piece of news. The show is going straight for series order for Superman and Lois, which I know, Veronica. I know you're not a big fan of.
No.
There's so many reasons why.
Yeah.
One of the big reasons is, I like Tyler just fine. I think he's a good actor, and I think that, he can be quirky and fun and do a Clark Kent that maybe, we haven't seen before. But I can't see him as Superman. I just can't. Like, my image of Superman, and I'm sorry to say, is always going to be somebody like Christopher Reeves and Brandon Routh. Henry Cavill, I'm not a huge fan of Henry personally, like as far as the actor, but he did a pretty good job too as Superman. But Tyler, he just seems like such a pipsqueak next to what I have in my head, and I'm not a huge fan of the actress Elizabeth, what's her name? Elizabeth Tulloch, who plays Lois. I'm not a huge fan of that Lois. And I don't like their chemistry.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry. That was like, I believed Marnovu and Zanine more as a married couple than I did Lois and Clark. And I'm like, this is so problematic because they had like one scene, but I believed that scene. Like them, their banter, them interacting, just talking, that felt like, okay, this is a married couple. I believe it. Lois and Clark, when she was with Brandon Routh Superman, I was like, yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
I felt it. I'm like, this feels right. With her Clark, there's just nothing. I don't feel a single thing. It just doesn't seem believable. Even on the phone, I'm just like, why is there just no spark between these two that I'm supposed to see? So I'm like, this is supposed to carry a show for the next 7 years. No.
Speaking of shows for possibly 7-year runs, did the brief glimpse on Earth, the new Earth 2 of Stargirl, and the trailer that was released this week, sort of expanding on the fact that this was a new JSA, Justice Society. Has that changed your impressions? I know we talked about it some on our prior show. Not really feeling it for Stargirl, but are you still at that place, or has the needle moved? Maybe give it a try.
No, I'm still not interested in Stargirl at all.
What about you, Tasha?
Nope. Okay. I don't. I feel like the cast that they have should probably be able to pull off the show, but I'm just not. I don't feel like it's a show that I need to watch. Like I'm honestly, and this is way more interested in watching a legacy show with Mia than I am of watching Stargirl, which is weird because as much as the majority of the Arrow fandom loves Arrow, at least we have some connection to this character. I just don't feel the need. I'm actually kind of superheroed out as it is with the CW shows. So it's like, if at least with Star City 2040, you've already made me invested in these characters. So for me to say we've spent the last 2 seasons with them. So if you're gonna do a show with them, then I'll pop in and watch that show over watching a brand new show where a brand new set of characters that I have to get invested in. I don't need it. We have so many. I'm barely watching the majority of the Arrowverse now.
Yeah. Fair point. Yeah. Fair point. Yeah. Fair point. And last before we wrap up, we have the Green Lantern show that's going to be on HBO Max. Looks which is very exciting news. Of course, the Crisis helped establish what Earths are. The Scene and Earth podcast probably favorite DC show other than Krypton and the CW ones, Doom Patrol, which again can't recommend it enough. They're on Earth 19, and then of course Titans on Earth 9. And speaking of Brandon Routh, I have to say, finally he had his moment, and I'm so that ending with him was just the perfect fitting in to the crossover.
I was clapping so loudly with that. I was like, yes. And I love the way he looked into the camera.
Just a smile and a wink, like you thought you were done with me, but I'm also, so here I
go. All right, guys. Well, this was a lot of fun. It was fun talking with you guys about the crisis. Any last thoughts before we close for the evening?
I can cover a lot of last thoughts, but because I wanted a lot more. But I will say that overall, even though it wasn't my favorite, it wasn't completely horrible. The Crisis on Infinite Earths, and I can appreciate what they were trying to do, and I thank them for introducing some of my favorite old school characters to people who may not have ever known them. And I am hoping that we get a better last 2 Arrow episodes than we got yesterday or Tuesday.
Yeah, wholeheartedly with that. It wasn't, the Easter eggs were great, the cameos were great. Story-wise, it was definitely no Crisis on Earth X.
Yes.
Overall, writing-wise, was not even close. But it was, like I said, it was serviceable, and the moments were really great moments.
Yeah.
So.
I enjoyed it. I overall, but if I had, it was very ambitious, and kudos to the creative team at the CW as far as to try to pull off this epic story and quite frankly, to fit one of the big changing stories in the comic book universe, and I think for me, I think that's the one thing that I think the crossover succeeded in is breaking down, bringing all the CW shows onto one Earth, and then fully establishing all the other DC shows, whether they're on a CW or any other form, and particularly the cinematic universe. We have one unit. We have a multiverse now, and it's established. And if nothing else, then if that is a metric to say that Crisis on if Earth succeeded, that's you can check that box that it was a success in that way, even if the story has some points where it was kind of low. But but I think the high to me with now the new multiverse outweighs the problems that I had with the show. So with that, Tasha, tell our listeners where they can find you.
You can find me at Hindsight20, HINDSITE20.
Veronica, can you tell folks where to find you on social media?
Y'all can find my annoying voice in written word at Nerdy Chicana, NERDYXICANA.
Yes,
Twitter.
And you can find me on Twitter at Will M. Polk. That's WILLMPOLK. And you can also find our host, Sarah Belmont, on Twitter at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Be sure to follow our crew on Twitter at CNN Nerd. Friend us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. But most importantly, rate, subscribe, and comment on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Spotify. Good night. Geek out. You're welcome.